Hey, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Outlaw for allowing me to narrate this story. This is one of my favorites, and actually what got me into writing. I also want to say thank you for adding an Australian character. I cannot do Australian accents, so which is basically a New York accent, with a little in it. That's your fault. Anyone that's Australian, I'm sorry. But I hope you guys enjoy this. This is like one of the first parts I'm doing of this. I plan on finishing the story. This is part 1 through 7. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. In order for me to tell you about this, you're going to need to know about Clint Rockwell first. Now, I've known him for around 8 years. He was always strange, to say the least, but not in the sense that it made him an outcast. The opposite, actually. I guess strange wasn't the right word. Let's call him exceptional. If I were to give you a quick rundown on his life, it looks something like this. Straight A's from primary to post-secondary, full rides to Ivy Leagues, internship offers out the ass. After just his undergraduate year, astonishingly charismatic and handsome. It was to the point where nobody even seemed to be bitter towards him, not jealous either. They just admired him. But despite all the parties he was invited to, all the attempts at friendship, all the girls that threw themselves at him, he chose to be a loner. In fact, I was one of the only people he talked to. Couldn't tell you why he chose me as an acquaintance. He just did. And let me tell you, I was about as average gets, set for a life of mundanity. It all started in 7th grade. I just failed a geometry test. To be fair, I didn't really study for it, but whatever. Clint was sitting right by me. I saw him take one disaffected glance at this paper before putting it down. He got 100. Of course. I guess he saw me staring because he looked down at his paper and chuckled. It was slightly embarrassing, of course, but instead of hurling an insult, he asked me if I had wanted to come over after school and study, maybe play with some video games. I agreed. That's when I started to get a glimpse into his ideals. You see, he was never satisfied with anything. I remember our conversation regarding what we wanted to do in the future. I had all the generic answers. Buy a Lamborghini, a big house in Hollywood, marry Megan Fox, yeah. I was that asshole, but Clint, he wanted something different. He had big aspirations. Adventure, he told me. Going somewhere uncharted, discovering something new, you know? Something that nobody's seen. At that time, I didn't know what he meant. What, like Jupiter or some shit? I asked him. He just chuckled. Maybe something like that. At that time, I couldn't fathom why he would want to go into space. Nothing's up there, I told him. What's the point? He just gave me an amused look, but it wasn't one of contentious superiority. He wasn't like that. He knew that I couldn't have understood, but he didn't fault me for that. Well, think about it. People's lives have become lackluster, he went on. When we are all on the comforts in the world, everything turns into structure, routine, nothing new. Our destinies decide by the time we're out of college. Who the hell wants to get caught up in a rat race and just chase monotony day to day? That's the worst possible outcome. Look, that's why we watch movies and read books. Escapism. Looking for stories that are infinitely more satisfying than the one that we're living in. I mean, what do we really have to look forward to? He talked a lot like this, but didn't sound suicidal. It was something else. This guy, beyond was driven. I could see it, but to be honest, I couldn't tell you what he did in the long hours he spent in his room alone. He never talked about it. By the time he went off to Caltech, and I went to Penn State, we started drifting apart. In fact, after the first year of his master's degree, he stopped talking to me completely. Stopped talking to anybody, actually. When he didn't go home for spring break, his folks called the cops. Apparently, he stopped going to class as well. They looked for him, but there was no traces. It was a cold case going nowhere. However, I do remember the last time we had communication. He sent me a Facebook message. This is all that it said. Do you want to be a part of something? It's a project I'm working on. I can explain more later. sent him a message asking about specifics, but he never responded. That was the last I'd heard of him for about 7 years. That was before he knocked on my door in the middle of the night, some hours ago. I wasn't going to open up at first. These kinds of stories never end well, however. That's when I heard my name being called by a distant familiar voice. I couldn't believe my ears. I stared through the peephole at what looked like a homeless man. He had dirty, tattered clothes, a mass of a beard, and generally unkempt appearance. But I recognized those eyes. I recognized that spark. It was Clint. I opened up and greeted him in disbelief, but before I could pelt him with questions, he stopped me. Look, don't freak out. I'll explain everything. Maybe let me shower first, though. He flashed his award-winning smile at me, though his pearly whites weren't what they used to be. It's really good to see you, by the way. That's when I got a closer look at his frame. It was bigger than I remembered, bulkier. Looked like he put on 10 pounds of muscle. His model-like face was now weathered, beaten, and covered in scars. He also smelled of sweat and grime. This was absolutely insane, to say the least. After he washed up and settled into a couch, he laid it all out. I'm going to tell you what he told me verbatim. Apparently, during the later half of his graduated year, he was approached by a psychics professor, Joel Rust, somewhat eccentric 42-year-old, but he was supposedly brilliant. Rust had chosen Clint specifically to partake in what he called a research project. He laughed when he told me this. We had to call it that, he said. If they knew what we were really doing, the funding would have been gone. There were 14 other people involved in this. 2 theoretical physicists, 3 cosmologists, 2 young thrill-seekers, 2 ex-Navy SEALs, a discharged U.S. soldier, an archaeologist, a retired MMA fighter, a disgraced entrepreneur, and a suicidal drifter Rust found trying to jump off of a bridge. It was a strange group for sure, but we all shared similar ideals, he explained. For one reason or another, we were all looking to get away from this world, looking for another frontier. Apparently, while on vacation, Rust had discovered something peculiar off a remote coast on the South Islands in New Zealand, something over the Cook Strait. Rust explained that he had been seeing some kind of strange, thick fog that hung over the clouds. We didn't know what he meant by that, Clint stated. He never really explained it. For years, he'd spent his summers over there and observing it himself. He then spent every second of his free time analyzing his observations. Eventually, he'd enlist the help of some cosmologists and other physicists. Clint looked at me. It seemed as if he was having trouble holding in a huge grin. You know what the theory they came to was? I shook my head. It was a passage to somewhere else. A different universe, so to speak. This floored me. I was skeptical for about a second, but then I thought about who I was talking to and how strange this whole situation was. I just kept listening. I asked how they'd figured that out. You want details? He replied. I thought about it. No, not really. Science was never my strong point. Anyhow, he told me how Russ had started conducting experiments. He'd fly a drone into the fog whenever a storm was brewing. Those were the only times where it was visible. He estimated that after it disappeared, there would be about a 3-minute window where he could control it. After that, it was gone forever. That's why we needed the funding. Clint explained. This shit was expensive. The culmination of all these experiments and all this research was supposed to be a trip into the fog, just to see what they would find. That's when Russ started forming the team. It took a while, but eventually gathered together people he deemed would be fit for something like this, along with other researchers involved. He said that he would choose me because of an essay I wrote for class, the topic about what the universe meant to us as individuals. Clint said. I guess it spoke to him. I'm sure he had other reasons as well. He smirked to himself. Now, while the ex-military and thrill-seekers were all good in shape, the rest of the researchers weren't. Nobody knew what to expect, really. That's why we had to train, cardio, strength, agility, the works. Nobody wanted to lag behind. Clint elaborated. After about 3 years, they deemed themselves ready to go. The big day was finally there on a warm spring day in California, and a particularly choppy one on the South Islands. Russ, Clint, and the rest of the team piled into a private plane owned by the entrepreneur. They brought with them months' worth of rations, weapons, first aid kits, and research equipment, parachutes as well, just in case. Everything you would think of, funnily enough. The Drifter was the only person who knew how to pilot. I remember thinking that this was bad shit. Wait, I asked him, so you guys were just going through with us? Was nobody scared of what could happen? He just chuckled. So, we have a bunch of insane researchers, soldiers scarred by combat, thrill seekers, a suicidal guy. Don't even get me started on myself. And you think we gave a shit? No, I guess we weren't. As it turns out, they figured out what Russ was talking about when they got close to the thing. Apparently the fog was dark gray and almost black. It was maybe 100 meters below the clouds and it was massive. The strangest part was that it didn't move at all. You could clearly tell where it began and where it ended. Everybody braced themselves upon entering. They were suddenly submerged into darkness. Clint said that he could see the silhouette of anticipation on everybody's faces from the faint cabin lights. After 3 minutes, the plane started malfunctioning. Here's the fucked up part. Russ never actually told anybody about the drone experiments until afterwards. So when this happened, everybody started freaking out. Nobody was expecting it, but soon after, a wave of light filled the plane. What they saw out the window was incomprehensible. A dark, foreboding landscape. Heavy rain pounded the windows while a cacophony of violent lightning bolts struck around them. To make matters worse, the plane was headed down into a black ocean beneath. As they got closer, they could tell that there was definitely movement in the water, large monuments, and they weren't just waves, luckily for them. The plane was also on trajectory for landmass up ahead. Nobody asked any questions. They just stuffed their bags with weapons, rations, and water before hastily strapping on their parachutes. It was at this point where they realized the military training would have come in handy. Right then, it was every man for themselves. Once the plane was nearly over the island, everybody started jumping out. A good portion of the team didn't get so lucky, other than Rust. Only one of the researchers survived. 2 of them couldn't open their parachutes in time. One landed in the water where he was quickly consumed by something, and one got struck by lightning on the way down. The entrepreneur and one of the ex-SEALs also didn't make it, both landing rough on the rocky shoreline. The team was suddenly down to 10. They watched as the plane spiraled out of control into the murky sea. The fog was also still visible in the distance, just hanging there. After they regrouped, they just sat in silence for a while. Nobody knew what to think. Russ's theory looked to be right, it seemed. The island itself was pretty similar to the tropical ones you would find on here on Earth, except for the trees as tall as an apartment complexes, and the fact that the sky was always cloudy. They later find out this place was named Dusk Blue. Another peculiar thing was that the lightning never seemed to strike land, only the ocean. Good news for them. They started making their way into the jungle in front of them. With nowhere else to go, this is all they could do. Amongst them, they managed to take 6 pistols, 4 machetes, an assault rifle, and a shotgun. No reserve ammunition, though. They'd also concluded that they had about 5 days of food and water for all of them. As they made their way across the land, some creepy, unexplainable shit started happening. The MMA fighter, they called him Duke, went to go piss in some bushes at one point. About 30 seconds later, he ran back to the group, freaked out and hyperventilating. Everybody tried to ask him what had happened. That's when they looked at the clearing he had come from. Duke was standing right there, with a blank expression plastered on his face, but he was also with them. Then out of nowhere, his copy began sprinting backwards into the woods at a torrid pace. Another occurrence took place when they came across what looked like a void of just floating in the air. In front of them, it was literally a door-sized black shape that was devoid of anything. One of the thrill seekers, Jeff, stuck his hand into it for a few seconds before pulling it back. He could still move it, but it became completely numb. It stayed that way. Early one night, they woke up to the sound of shells blasting in the air. Lower, the archaeologist was shooting at something just a few meters away from where they were sleeping. Clint said it was hard to describe, something along the lines of a massive spider-human hybrid. The shotgun didn't affect it, it just crawled away. God, this sounds like a fucking nightmare. Is that what you wanted? I asked him, and I was sincerely curious. I mean, yeah, this is exactly what I needed. His words sounded genuine. I guess it didn't matter that I couldn't understand him. He understood himself. He went on. 3 days passed, and they're still in the jungle. They didn't know where they were heading, but nobody wanted to admit that. Rusty cosmologists continuously recorded their observations while everybody else is getting antsy. They were running out of food. The other thrill seekers, Clint forgot his name, was starting to go delirious. They seen a small creature that vaguely resembled a chicken, and he tried attacking it with a machete. Unfortunately, his throat was instantly slit upon making contact with it. Nobody went near any wildlife after that. It looked like hunting for food was now out of the question. Urgency was sitting in. At night, they'd start hearing horrific, unrecognizable sounds all around them. One time they woke up to see a pale humanoid creature with no facial features sitting cross-legged just a few meters away. Suddenly the skin on its head peeled back to reveal a singular monstrous-sized eye. It only needed to blink one more time before everybody got the hell out of there. They'd also came across a strange hole in the ground at one point. It was about the size of a basketball. The other ex-SEAL name, also forgotten, walked up to take a look. Cautiously, he peered into it. About a minute passed, and he still hadn't moved. People started shouting at him just to leave it, but he ignored everything. They tried prying him away, but he didn't budge. He just stayed crouched, eyes blankly transfixed on the hole. After about 10 minutes, they left him. Things were reaching a tipping point once the 5th day came. They were starving, sleep-deprived, and paranoid, with only 4 MREs left for the 8 of them. They needed to conserve energy. However, every time they stopped to rest, they'd hear the footsteps behind them. They'd look for the source, but there was nothing visible to be found. The steps would just get louder and louder. Eventually, they'd caught up. Clint said they could hear something running quick circles around them before he started feeling lightheaded. The last thing that he remembered hearing before passing out was a barrage of shouts coming from somewhere in front of them, none of them voices that he'd recognized. He awoke sometime later, lying on a stiff mattress in a small wooden cabin. His head was pounding and his face was covered in dried blood when he touched it. He looked around the room, nearly jumping out of his skin when he saw somebody sharpening some kind of weapon in the corner. But he didn't look to be human, resembling a Mediterranean man. Upon seeing Clint wake, he got up and introduced himself as Slade. He also spoke English, albeit it was in a strange accent that Clint had never even heard before. Now, Clint was no small guy, 6'1", but Slade still towered over him. He explained that he was essentially a guard protecting a walled civilization called Barrow Locus, where Clint currently was. He described how he and the rest of the team had come into contact with what the locals referred to as stalkers. They'd eventually managed to fend them off, bringing Clint and the rest of them to safety. They were happy to let them stay as long as they did their fair share of work. He further explained the island they were on. As it turns out, Dusk Blue was actually one of the few places in that world that had a semblance of order in society. While most of it was extremely hostile, there were protected settlements set up all around, where people could live in relative peace. However, the main attraction was at the center, a massive self-governing city-state known as Paradise X. While settlements like Pharaoh Locus could be compared to small towns in the Old West, Paradise X was more comparable to a modern-day metropolis. He went on to explain a strange trend in births on the island, in which around 1 in 1,000 children were born with enhanced levels of strength, speed, and nearly impenetrable skin. Officials from Paradise X would come around settlements every now and then in order to recruit these children to the security force set to protect their borders. In exchange, the families would be allowed citizenship and a place to live within the city. Of course, everybody was after this resulting in a lot of questionable moral decisions when it came to children. Clinton asked about all the stuff that had happened before they were rescued. All the weird shit. Apparently Slade just sighed and told him not to worry about it. He didn't have the answers either. That stuff had always been here, and it was better not to think about it. He told him to simply stay inside the settlement and not cause any trouble. The punishment for disorderly conduct was exile. I was trying to wrap my head around any of this when Clint started yawning. He told me that he was tired, that we could talk in the morning. I tried to get him to stay up and tell me more, but his eyes were already halfway closed. I've gone through so much messed up shit, man. Just let me rest a bit. Don't worry. I got more to tell you. Spent 7 years there, for Christ's sake. He said drowsily. Yeah, fine. You take the guest room. I told him after feeding him some leftover spaghetti. I let him up there. I had to ask him one more thing before he passed out, though. What about your folks? How the hell are you going to explain this to them? He paused for a second before speaking. Couldn't if I tried. They're gone, man. To be honest, the lack of emotion in his voice disturbed me a bit. Oh shit, I'm so sorry. That's all I could utter out. He just let out a forced chuckle and said, What are you sorry for? You didn't go and do anything. Before disappearing into the bedroom. That's when I really thought about what had just happened. If Clint's been telling the truth, then that's horrifying to think about. I guess I'll read another update when he wakes up. So, it's currently morning, and I didn't expect to get much sleep last night, and I didn't. We just picked up some breakfast. Clint's been eating like an animal, I guess. Can't blame him, though, but I don't want to get off topic. He followed up by describing a rough layout of the world beyond the island. By his account, oceans made up 85% of the surface. There was only 2 continents. Well, there used to be 3, but one was essentially annihilated and made unlivable by previous world war. There were also islands scattered throughout. Ones like Dusk's Blue and 2 remaining continents were known as Neo-Civitas and Heaven's Curse. I'll discuss the latter first. Clint estimated that he had spent around 2 months there. That's another story. To put it simply, it resembled an apocalyptic shitshow, the vast majority of it being deserted wasteland. If you thought Dusk Blue sounded bad, this shit was something else entirely. Clint explained, apparently the life expectancy for children born there was around 6 human years. The place where people lived ranged from lawless zones controlled by warlords to totalitarian fortresses and everything in between. A total population of 17 billion living in the area, about twice the size of Russia, and those were only what we could consider to be humans. The place was also filled with some of the most incomprehensible, horrific things he had seen. Any place that wasn't occupied by the majority of humans was simply referred to as oblivion. If you went out of these places alone, you weren't going to last long. Now, the creatures that dwelled within oblivion were a bit tough to explain. Clint's experience with them were limited. However, he'd heard that people stopped trying to label them all. There were simply too many. He told me about some of the most infamous ones. Harbingers. These were giant winged monstrosities with sharp spikes protruding out of every inch of its body. You could barely see their skin. Even the heads were mostly covered. These things were massive, about the size of a large shuttle bus. It was rumored that the spikes coming out of their skin put them in constant agonizing pain. Because of this, they were in a constant state of rage, slaughtering anything that moved. They were called Harbingers because whenever one arrived, many others were soon to follow. That meant unavoidable mass-scale death and destruction. These things weren't easy to kill, and people had to prepare. Butcher Knights. Nobody really knows what these are. The theory floating around is that they were members of an ancient order of knights that had been condemned by the otherworldly beings. They were now forced to roam Heaven's Curse for eternity, searching for human flesh to eat. Yes, they ate people. In appearance, they were 10-foot-tall humanoids covered in head-to-toe in crude black armor, resembling that of a traditional knight. Upon close inspection, it also seemed as if the armor was welded into their skin, which appeared to be rotting. They attack human outposts with extremely large, rusty pikes and axes. If the initial blow didn't kill you, the ensuing infection sure would. Fighting them one-on-one wasn't an option, as they could easily overpower multiple humans at once. Steam cannons had to be used to take them out. Weeping Infernos. They were also humanoid in nature, despite being always covered in fire. They rode on top of unidentifiable creatures. They also looked like horses, except for the fact that they had 6 legs and ran ludicrously speeds. It's unclear if the riders are physically attached to the creature, as they seem to have their own legs, but have never been seen to dismount. The way they kill is actually not what you'd think. While the constant stream of flames that burst out of their body was certainly a cause of concern, a bigger problem was their persistent, ungodly streaks. If you got too close to them, your brain would eventually explode. That's where they got their names from. The Hunter. This was a rare one. People were unsure if there was only one of these, or if there were more. This stems from the fact that it only ever appeared by itself, but that didn't mean it wasn't easy to deal with. Supposedly, this thing was seemingly indestructible until proven otherwise. That is, but so far, nobody's made a dent in it. However, it was only really pursuing one thing, the strongest entity in the surrounding area. Somehow it could sense them. That meant the more settlements would try and protect their most capable fighters. The more people would die when the hunter tried to get to them. Eventually communities would just give them up and hand them over whenever it came around. They'd fight each other and the hunters would always win. Most reports of appearance may have been falsified, since so little people have actually seen it. However, the most agreed upon one was being more than a triple the size of a butcher knight. It had no legs, about 12 arms that it used to attack and move. Its hands were large, covered in caustic liquid, and could grab a human, simultaneously crushing and dissolving them in seconds. It also apparently had no face, just a large mouth filled with sharp black teeth on its torso. Ultimately, these only scratched the surface of Heaven's Curse. Was like the ocean, mostly unexplored, and vast majority of creatures dwelling within it still undiscovered. This was probably good, however, they weren't the only things that inhabited had to worry about. There was also a perplexing phenomenon that seemed to plague everybody who lived there. Nobody could explain it away, nobody could identify the source, and nobody even knew what to call it. They just accepted it. A good parallel for this in our reality would be the glitches in the Matrix some people experience. On Heaven's Curse, you could be simply walking around before getting disoriented for a second. When you'd come to your senses, you'd find yourself standing outside of the civilization you were just in. Out in oblivion, people could claim to see things that weren't there, hear things they didn't have a source, and be having conversations before realizing that there was nobody in front of them. One of the most extreme cases were times where everybody around you would stop in place, have all their heads twisted, look directly at you, and then their lips would stretch ear to ear in the most horrific grin you'd ever seen. After a couple of seconds, everything would go back to normal. Nobody would say that they didn't even remember doing so. This happened to Clint once. You may be wondering, how could there be still a constant population of 17 billion, considering all of this? Well, there's one thing that people lived there didn't have to worry about. That was sustenance. Now, Clint admitted that the food they had to eat wasn't very good, but it was abundant. The bark on the trees were nutritionally dense, rain came regularly, didn't have to be boiled to drink, and various, albeit strange-looking rooted vegetables could be grown almost everywhere, with shortages being unheard of. Additionally, these medium-sized insects called salivators were rampant all around, but they were never a nuisance, never seemed to be spread a disease, and if cooked, could be used as a great source of protein. That's why there were so many people. Children were being bred at toward a rate. Emotional connection to your offspring wasn't really a thing. And the ones that survived attacks by the Oblivion creatures would be trained to deal with subsequent assaults. Since food wasn't an issue, the more there were, the better chances the settlement would survive. However, the population always seemed to even itself out. The climate was also favorable. While the north and south ends of the continent had extreme temperatures, nobody really lived there. In fact, nobody knows what lives there. The rest of it could probably be compared to Australia, pretty hot but still livable. There were no seasons, and the sky was perpetual, covered in what looked like an orange haze, so sunburn wasn't an issue. With that said, everybody still wanted to get the hell out of there. The quality of life was still absolutely shit. They all wanted to reach Neo Civitas, which they nicknamed Heaven's Promise, and that was pretty much impossible given the fact they were separated by as much of an ocean as the geography would allow. Now, Clint had never actually been inside Neo Civitas. He'd only ever heard about it in read descriptions. Supposedly, it was only a tenth the size of Heaven's Curse, and it was named after the only city on the entire continent. Clint said that was a physical description of the place that would be akin to Manhattan on steroids, a megacity that was a host of a population of 275 million. It was a continuous stretch of brilliant buildings and skyscrapers that lit up the night. It was only ever so functioning society. People had jobs, could start families, and could engage in recreational activities nobody had ever have to worry about beyond shit like taxes and public opinion. Sound like a rat race all over again, Clint exclaimed. While the area outside the city limits were somewhat hostile, it's still nowhere near the extent of Heaven's Curse, or anywhere else for the matter. Besides, there was a monumental metal base wall about 400 meters tall surrounding the entire place. There were also heavily armored military personnel called Apex officers guarding it. In fact, a lot of it was compromised of the enhanced soldiers guarding Paradise X. These two places actually had an agreement where a portion of the ex-soldiers would be flown from Dusk Blue to Neo Civitas in exchange for firearms, and yes, they were the only ones who had access to air travel. They were also widely believed to be the sole producers of the guns and ammunitions. Resources were scarce in this world, and most of them were on Neo Civitas. The few other resource-rich islands around the world were essentially picked dry by the recon teams sent by the government. This was the world's only superpower. They called all the shots and were unopposed in doing so. However, there was only one thing they did have to worry about. You see, there was one thing that Neo Civitas had in common with everywhere else. The sky. It was always cloudy, nobody could come up with a tangible explanation why. It was always just like that. Well, that's just what those people think, Clint remarked. Quickly, strangely, he didn't elaborate on that. That's when I really noticed how weird he'd been acting the whole time. He'd been telling me this. There was an increasing urgency in his tone. Anyhow, he went on, apparently, there was a legend of sorts that had been permeated every community all around the world. When the day comes where the clouds finally part, true Armageddon will come to see fruition, and nobody could stop it. I'd been so caught up in this that I'd forgotten I actually had work that day. My boss had texted me in the morning telling me that I'd come in later, just for a few hours. I was already late. Shit. I told Clint, look, I gotta run in quick. Just stay here, alright? Don't go anywhere. I'll bring back some pizza or something. He responded almost instantly. Yeah, just do what you gotta do. I'll be here. He said this in the same urgent tone he'd been using before. However, I didn't think anything about it. I'm currently at work now, but I can't focus on anything. There were still too many things Clint left unexplained. I just came back and he's gone. I somewhat expected this. It seems that he took a bunch of perishable rations, a few sets of my clothes, and a laptop and some cash. However, I did find something on the kitchen counter. It was an old crusty journal covered in dirt and bloodstains. There was also a sticky note attached to it. This is what it read. I'm sorry, James. You've always been a few people that I could actually bear talking to. Maybe you'll understand eventually. This journal should answer some of the questions that you still have. In the meantime, there's something that I need to do. Bye for now. Clint. P.S. I'll pay you back sometime. You know I will. Smiley face. I smiled at that. It was true. He'd always kept his word. Deep down, I knew that his stay wasn't going to be last long. He just wanted this kind of guy. He was... Whatever he was doing, I hope he succeeds. In the meantime, it looks like I'm going to have some reading to do. Let's see what this thing is really all about. Again, my post to come may be a bit sporadic. Work's got me going on my heels, you know, how it is. As much as I want answers, I also need to eat. Nonetheless, I've started reading the journal. I'll list the names of the people Clinton arrived with before I start typing it out. The one who were still alive at the beginning of the first entry, that is. Just to make it less confusing. There was Clint and Rust, of course, and then Duke, MMA fighter, Lauren, archaeologist, Travis, the drifter, Christian, discharged soldier, Hawken, cosmologist, Kaganori, thrill seeker. Anyhow, here we go. Entry 1. I thought I'd write down my thoughts as well as any significant events while I'm here. Now, I'm not sure who this is for, or whoever's gonna read it, but I as well do this. My name is Clint Rockwell, and I'm currently in some strange world that isn't Earth. How'd I get here? Well, that's a bit too much to explain. We've been on Dusk's Blue, the island we first landed on, for around 2 months now. This is assuming time is passing the same here as it does on Earth. And I think it does, or close enough anyways. Hawkins estimates that the time between days here is around 23 hours and 40 minutes. Shit you not, the guy sat there and counted the seconds one day. He's pretty much gone crazy at this point. I can't really blame him, though. This must be fucking insane for him. Besides, everybody been pretty nice around here. All seem to be genuine good people. Once you get past the cultural differences, that is. Apparently a handshake here means war. But I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me. For the first week, I was amazed by this place, but after that, shit kind of fell on a routine again. The satisfaction that came from making this discovery has been dwindling. It's just a day after day of manual labor, eating gruel and sitting around. The thing I didn't realize was nobody ever goes outside of this place unless they deem it to be a direct threat worth intervening in. Hell, the only reason they bothered saving us was because we were landing in the stalkers directly to them. There's really nothing to do here, however the stories I hear from the elders were pretty interesting. For example, some time ago, they found a dead body lying just outside the settlement walls. Not wanting it to stink up the place, some guy carried it away and threw it into some foliage. That night, they heard somebody yelling at around the same place they found the body. When they checked it out, it was the same dead guy from earlier, except he was alive and didn't have a scratch on him. They didn't let him in, obviously. You see, while shit like this would encourage most people to stay within the safer confines of the settlement, it just didn't have the same effect on me. Shit like this made me want to get out there. Made me want to go and explore. I realized we almost died on the way here, but we're also unprepared with people we know their way around. It could work out. You can't wave a piece of meat in front of the lion and expect it to stay in the cage. Right, that was dumb as hell, and I wish I didn't write it down, but I don't have an eraser right now. So, I guess it's staying in. Maybe I'll figure something out. Entry 2. An opportunity arose just now. One of the guards here, Grillo, approached me yesterday, apparently on a convoy to Paradise X is coming around tomorrow to pick up enhanced children. Now, there aren't any actually here, but this was his plan. As soon as they came, we would tell them we had some. We could lead them into one of the cabins and ambush them, while somebody else took out the drivers. I asked him how the hell we were going to do that, since he had guns. But we do too. He responded with a toothy grin. That's when I realized we did, didn't we? Apparently Paradise X goes off on assumptions that nobody at any of the settlements possess firearms, since gunpowder is pretty much unavailable on the whole island. The only reason Paradise X has them is because of the trade deal they do with some of the places, or something. Now, I've never done something like this, and I don't know if I really could be comfortable doing so, but this seems like the only way I'm getting out of here. Still, I'm not killing anybody. Rillo also told me not to tell Slade, as it wouldn't go down well with him because of the past incidents. Entry 3. Grillo and I have worked it out. He's got 2 other guards on this, and I've convinced Duke, Christian, and Kaganori. It didn't take much. They were all itching to get out of here as well. However, Lauren wasn't sure about it. Maybe she'd come around. Russ said, "Fuck no," when I brought it up, and I'm pretty sure Hawkins is actually going insane because he just ignored everything I said. As for Travis, well, he actually seems really happy here. I saw him smile for the first time when a little girl made him a wooden necklace. I'm not going to bother him. All I know is that this is happening, and no matter what the outcome, at least I've done something others have. Entry 4. I don't know if we could gauge what just happened as a success. Still, I came out of it pretty unscathed. As for my no-kill rule, well, those Paradise X motherfuckers were horrendous. As soon as they arrived in their 3-vehicle convoy, they started causing shit. Some of them started taunting the townsfolk while others swept the cabins. I counted 9 of them in total. I think it hit a boiling point when one of them started groping a woman. That's when everything went to shit. I understood why Grillo was so adamant that we do this now. He was holding them some pent-up rage, for sure. When we saw this, he stormed out of the cabin where we were going to hold the ambush and shot the guy down. Who really wasn't expecting it? He took it out 2 more of them before rushing in, sporting a nasty bullet wound in his thigh. I'm not sure why he was so good at aiming if he'd never held a gun before. Whatever happened went by quick. In a life-of-death situation, all reservations you had about morality go out the window. I took a shooting lesson as part of my training beforehand, so I managed to take a few out of them myself. I didn't feel anything when I did so. They were looking pretty good until Christian blasted one of the soldiers point blank with a shotgun. He barely flinched. It was enhanced. Fucking hell. I remember Grillo shouting. He had told us there were no chance they'd be sending one of them with the convoy, that they were too important. Well, that was bullshit, wasn't it? The guy went on a rampage, picking up people and slamming them on the ground. Every punch that he threw was fatal. Slade had come out at a point to challenge him, but he was dismantled easily. I saw him give a look of somber disappointment at Grillo before going limp. The whole plan was going downhill until Rust approached and shouted at the guy. "Come here, you fucking pussy!" was all he said. I had no idea what his plan was. That is till he took out a grenade. I guess he'd been hiding that. He took the pin off and chucked it at the guy and watched as it bounced off of him. I guess Parasite's ex didn't use grenades because the guy just scoffed and started towards Russ. At this point, Christian had already silently been gesturing everybody away from the whole situation. The grenade exploded right as the guy was stepping over it. Everything fell silent for a while. That's when I heard the groaning. He was still alive. But he seemed to be incapacitated. A bunch of the guys followed up by tossing him out of the settlement walls. I guess all that commotion had attracted something in the jungle because we heard screaming soon after. After that, we stayed around to help for a while, rebuilding, tending to any injured. Least we could do. I had to thank Rust for what he did. The guy really had balls. When I did it, he just looked at me like I was insane. It was fair judgment. In retrospect, that was a reckless kid, he told me. I just nodded and asked him if he had any change in his mind about coming with us. I doubted it, but it was worth a shot. He looked around the village for a second before sighing and shaking his head. No. I got some work to do, and I don't think I'd be able to get anything done wherever you're going. He patted me on the shoulder before walking away. Good luck, kid. Hope you find what you're looking for. Now, I don't know why that sentence filled me with a sense of melancholy. I guess it got me wondering what that really was. What was I actually after? Maybe I'm not so sure yet, but that was just some more reason to go and find out. Before we left, I watched Travis consoling a group of children. I'm really not sure if us landing on the island did any good for this place. Everybody seems scared now. More than before, whatever. There's no changing it now. We checked out the vehicle after. I'm not sure what kind of they were. I guess I wouldn't have known anyways. It still resembles an armored lifted jeep. Eventually we figured out to get them going. At this point, it was Grillo, Christian, Duke, Kaganori, another guard named Novex, and Lauren. She changed her mind. Could have been a lot of reasons, but she didn't tell me. "Let's just go," was all that she said to me. When I inquired about it, we're all just following Grillo now. Apparently he knows where to go. He also stated that he had a plan once we got there. But there was no obvious hint of doubt wavering in his voice when he claimed this. Well, see what happens, I suppose. End of the entry. This is how far I've gotten up to now. I'm not sure what to make of this, but my perception of Clint Rockwell sure has been a dynamic. I don't know what to make of this guy anymore. I'll post more again when I can. Bye for now. Hey guys, sorry for the wait. Let's get to the chase. This is what Clint wrote next. Entry 5. I'm not sure what the hell's going on right now. I'm at the back of the convoy with Lauren and Kakanori. was at the wheel. We were driving fine before we left. Grillo had told us not to look at anything outside the vehicle, especially not to fire off any shots. There was a 90% chance that it wouldn't kill anything. I almost broke that rule when I caught a glimpse of something pressing against the window right beside me. It had a pale skin and wide open mouth that covered half of its face. I just shuddered and ignored it. Everyone else seemed to have the same idea. That was a while ago, however, Grillo just stopped completely and nobody knows why. You see, the road, if you could call it that, is extremely narrow and he's blocking everything in front of us. Fuck! Maybe we'll get going soon. Being out there at the night is pretty horrific. I swear it's been at least 10 minutes and he still hasn't moved an inch. Kakanori's getting pissed. He wants to go out and see what's going on. Lauren's trying to convince him that it wasn't well, since Grillo hasn't even stepped out, but he seems adamant. To be honest, I'm close to going checking out on myself. Shit. Dude just came out the front of us. Holding a rifle, he's walking towards something in front of where Grillo stopped. He's yelling at it now. He sounds pissed. What the hell is going on? Now he's raising the weapons. Grillo just stopped out and tackled him to the ground. They're wrestling now. Kakanori did run out and see what's going on. I need to know as well. I'll write down what happens later. Entry 6. Well, that was fucked up. I got there just in time to witness Duke putting Grillo into a rear naked choke while he was gasping for air. Duke got startled and shouting again. Grillo was begging for us to stop him in between labored breaths. That's when I saw what was in front of the vehicle. It was Duke's copy, the one that we'd seen during the first days we landed on the island. Although, maybe it wasn't the same one. Duke was hysterical. "What the fuck do you want from me?" He screamed at it. His copy just stood there staring at him blankly, almost taunting him. "Don't let him touch it!" Grillo shouted at us from behind. I didn't know what to do in the moment, neither did Kaganori. I could see Novix running up from us from behind, but he seemed hesitant to do anything. We just remained passive observers. Duke was starting to get close to the thing, very close. It looked as if it was about to throw a punch any second. I turned to see Grillo fishing a pistol out of the vehicle. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked him. He didn't respond. Instead, he just pointed the gun directly at Duke. "Don't fucking do it," he pleaded. Duke was just ignoring everything. That's when he raised a fist. Grillo got the shot off in time. Duke's blood splattered everywhere as he fell to the ground. Nobody moved after that. We all just stared in anticipation, waiting for his captain's next move. I saw Kaganori slowly inching his way back to the vehicle. The thing stayed put. Just stared at Duke's body, but his facial expression was different. It almost looked disappointed. So when its body started changing, it was hard to explain. I just remember it looking surreal. Its skin seemed to be bubbling and it was growing taller. Eventually it started walking away backwards at speed no human should have been able to move. As soon as it was out of the sight, Grillo screamed at us to get back in our vehicle. We obliged. That's where we are now, driving again. Laura is asking us what happened, but I don't really feel like reliving it. Kakanori hasn't said a word. I'll ask Grillo about it later, I guess. We finally stopped near a clearing. Grillo's gotten out of the vehicle and is signaling for us to do the same. Couldn't tell you how long it's been, but I'm cramping up. I eventually told Lauren what we saw, but she had no response to it. She's been staring at her lap. I'm not really sure why we aren't driving anymore, but I definitely see lights in the distance. We must be getting the rest of the way on foot. I'm going to talk to Grillo now and see what he says. Alright. It seems he doesn't know much about it either. He's only been told to do upon direct encounters with it. Apparently the number one rule is that you cannot initiate contact with it under any circumstances. As long as you're in the peripheral view, it can imitate your appearance perfectly. It will also attack you, given that you don't touch it first or take any action that may harm it, like running it over. You're just supposed to walk away from it. I asked him what was supposed to happen once you touched it. His response was short and cryptic. That sets it free. We can't have that. I tried asking him what the hell I was supposed to mean, but he changed the subject. We gotta walk the rest of the way. He said, "Can't pull up the convoy, grab all the weapons." This was disconcerting, to say the least, but it looked like I was getting any answers out of him. I just did what he told me to do. We started heading towards the clearing. Through the brush, we could see the outer limits of the city. There was a big wall. It looked like stone spanning the place. There was also a large gate surrounded by guards. I could also see some buildings peek out from the top. I nearly forgotten the sound of everyday city hustle at this point. This was a glimpse back into the world. That's when Grillo dropped the bomb on us. He had no fucking plan. Apparently it actually used to be a guard for Paradise X, or he got kicked out for reporting the rampant misconduct his co-workers participated in. Yeah, it looked this place was beyond corrupt. The guards would beat, harass, and rape their way all around the city with no accountability. And he got sick of it. When they came here for revenge, he was going to kill as many as he could before they stopped him. "We never had a gun before," he said, with his twisted grin. "They won't see it coming." Look, Grillo's a good guy, but this is madness. He told us that we could go back, that he wouldn't hold it against us, but the problem was we didn't know how to get back to the settlement. Novix had a similar story to the Grillo, but sure as hell wasn't helping us either. Well, looks like we could either try and brave it in this shit show of a jungle, or hope the best in the city. This shit was looking bleak. I'm listening to Grillo and Novix discuss the plan of action right now. Everybody looks horrified. Kaganori got his face buried in his hands. Christian is praying near a tree, and I think I saw a tear roll down his Lauren's eye. But I seem to feel nothing, in fact. Now that I think about it, I'm actually kind of excited. Is this just blatant denial of my situation, or am I going just insane? Who the fuck knows? The best thing I can do right now is focus on not getting shot. They don't use enhanced guards outside the walls. Again, we're too important. However, it seems like Grillo doesn't always know what he's talking about. All we can do is hope for the best. The plan itself is simple. Novix would put us on a Paradise X uniform he took from the convoy and walk towards the guards. If he didn't get immediately shot down, he'd open fire. That's when the rest of us come in. With the attention on him, we'd take care of the others. After that, we'd use the guards' keys to unlock the gate and wreak further havoc. Now, I'm not planning on this simply walking around and slaughtering random guards. I wouldn't last a minute that way. I'll hide somewhere, to cool off and explore the city. After that, who knows? It's not like I have much time to think right now. Anyways, Grill's counting down already. He's got 9 fingers up. 8, 7, fucking hell. I don't know how I keep getting so lucky. I got skinned by 2 bullets, but that was it. I'm hiding behind a dumpster in an alleyway right now with Christian and Lauren. I don't know where Kaganori is, but I know that Novix was shot dead by the guards as soon as he walked out there. We managed to get rid of the rest of them while they were busy with him. I remember seeing Grillo taking a bullet in the shoulder, Kaganori in the thigh, and one destroyed Christian's ear. But this time, Grillo was right. None of those damn super soldiers were there. However, we were also pretty much out of ammo. It didn't take long before we heard shouting coming from inside the walls. After we unlocked the gates, we were met with a large statue of some dude with a hook for a hand. A bunch of civilians started staring at us as well. Here's the thing. I expected the quality of life in Paradise X to at least be decent. However, it looked horrendous. Everybody had bags under their eyes and tattered clothes barely hung under their skinny frames. They also looked like disconnected zombies. The city itself looked like a post-nuclear Gotham. There were tons of skyscrapers, but they were foreboding and dirty. There were destitute buildings lining the place, and every street seemed to be cracked. It was filled with what I assumed to be roving police squads. The amount of people sleeping on the sidewalks was both astonishing and disturbing at the same time. I swear, I saw some of the dudes getting the shit kicked out of them in plain view of everybody, and nobody intervened, not even the police. But that's probably because they were running towards us. However, they didn't have guns. It would look like batons and knives. That's when Grillo went all out. He did the last clip of the rifle into a cluster of police before using it as a melee weapon. He was hurling loud and aggressive expletives at them while he did this. God, he really hated this place, didn't he? I need to get the hell out of there. The last I saw of Grillo was him getting picked up and tossed into a windshield by an enhanced. I ran away from that whole situation until I was about to pass out. Civilians kept looking at us, but they didn't seem to give us a shit. At this point, I still had 3 bullets left. I looked back to see Christian and Lauren not far behind. They also looked to be on the verge of puking. I didn't see where Kaganori went. That's where we are now, hiding behind this filthy dumpster, trying to catch our breath. I don't know what we're going to do next. I don't know what we're going to do at all. I've killed so many people, but I don't really mind, to be honest. Entry 9. Shit, a couple of cops were walking by us now. We decided to hide directly in a dumpster just to play it safe. My eyes were watering. Lauren just simply silently gagged. It smells like nothing I've ever experienced before. I'm not sure what I can do. I have a gun, but they don't, and I could probably jump out and force them to give up their weapons, but maybe I will. Wait. I just noticed that one of the cops has a tattoo on his forearm. Could it be? Holy shit. It's the Chicago Cubs logo. This motherfucker's from Earth. 9. Some interesting things developed have just occurred. Whether they're good or not is just left to be decided. I guess my adrenaline was spiked the fuck up, because I decided to jump out of the dumpster, gun raised. As soon as I did, both cops rushed me. They saw that I was armed for sure, but I guess they didn't care. I shot the guy without the tattoo before being taken down by the other one. Took a couple of the baton blows to the ribs before he was restrained by the Christian. He groaned, shouting in me. Turrell burst. Kill me, you fuck! I don't care! I told him to calm down, then I laid it all out to him. I told him where we came from, that we were from Earth. His expression seemed to change drastically after that. He was listening intently. What happened to you? How'd you get here? Christian eventually asked. As it turns out, he was a German-American named Kuhn Steiner. He used to be a part of the 82nd Airborne Division of the U.S. Army. One day on a mission to Iraq, some strange shit happened. The same shit that happened to us. It was a cloudy day, he explained. 1 second we were up in the air. You know the rest, only 5 of us actually made it into the island. I was the only one who made it to this fucking place. Apparently he killed all the guards who were outside the walls at this time. I was running on fumes, he said. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I guess my primal instincts just kicked in. He'd also realized that the bullets he didn't do a whole lot against the jungle creatures, so he still had plenty of ammunition at the point. When the backup came, they wanted just to get rid of him at first, but then they realized that it could be a valuable asset. They just lost like 10 fucking guards, he recalled. I guess they thought taking me in and turning me into one of them wasn't a bad idea. So that's what they did. Been there ever since. I can't tell you how many times I've thought about offing myself. He continued. Nobody should live in a place like this. His voice started quivering, but I always knew something could happen. Now you guys are here. I was a bit taken back by this. I mean, what the hell was I expecting us to do? I asked him about it. Well, surely one of you know about how to pilot, right? Unfortunately, I don't. I thought about it. Travis was still back at the settlement. I asked him how the hell he was going to help. Regardless, he looked around for a bit. That's when we all heard distant sounds of boots stomping on the concrete, headed our way. Look, come back to my place first. I'll tell you about it there. So that's where we went, and that's where I am right now. You'd think that somebody as important as law enforcement would be getting better living conditions. This place was beyond a shithole. It's on the 5th floor of some dilapidated building that feels like it's going down any second. Apparently, Kuntz only gets an hour of running water a day, and that's no air conditioning. 90% of his meals consist of these stiff brown energy bars. He gave us some. I almost puked when I saw something blinking back at me after I'd taken my bite, but this was his plan. He'd sneak us out of this place, and we'd go back to the settlement. Kuntz knew how to get that there. In order to pick up Travis, who would steer. Apparently the controls were similar enough to Earth's that after that we'd go back to Paradise X, break in one of those hangars where they stored the aircrafts, and fly out of there in search of the fog again. In search of the way back, obviously, there was about 1 billion things that could go wrong with this. First of all, there were apparently only 4 small planes in the entire hangar. It was heavily guarded, but he had a solution to that. He knew about 15 other guards who also wanted out of this place. Should be enough to break into the hangar, Kuhn stated. Over the years he had told them about what Earth was like, and it fascinated them. Why they didn't just disregard him as a crazy person was simple. They were desperate for something else. Anywhere else. Everybody thought about doing it before, but nobody knew how to fly. This would be a golden opportunity for them. I thought about the guards that hadn't encountered earlier. None of them did seem to care whether they died or not, but there was also Travis. There was no way in hell that he would come with us. He actually seemed to like it. As crazy as it is, I can't see him willingly going back. And then was the biggest problem. What if there was no fog to be found? Were we just going to drift around the sky until our fuel ran out? I ran this by Kuntz, he sighed. Honestly, anywhere is better than here. If we have to land somewhere else, then so be it. Not staying in whatever the fuck this place is anymore. His tone was dead serious, expression unwavering. He was 100% committing to this. I told him we'd do it. Christian and Lauren didn't have any objections, I guess, and I also my fill of this island. However, I really don't think we're going to find the fog again. Deep down, I know Kuntz doesn't either. It's just a coping mechanism for him. This is all he's got. It's currently morning, but we're going to leave at night. Easier to sneak out that way. I have to stay. I'm still excited. I know I shouldn't be, but I am. We aren't going back to Earth. There's no way. Tree 11. It's finally dark out. We're going for it. Kuhn says that there's a hidden tunnel that we can take that'll lead us out. There's also a vehicle waiting for us, which one of the other guards had set up. Tree 12. We're driving back to the settlement now. Fortunately for us, the vehicle has blinds on the passenger windows. I decided this would be a good time to ask Kuhn some more questions about Paradise X. As it turns out, this place is some sort of combination between a dictatorship and an anarchy. There's technically somebody who runs and has power over everything. They call him the Pioneer. It's ironic because he had absolutely no contribution in the discovery of this place. Now, this guy, he can make any laws he wants, but he just leaves the cesspool of the city to fester in its own waste. That's right, there were no actual rules against murder or anything of the matter. The only real laws were that you wouldn't attack the law enforcement, which was broken on an hourly basis, and that you couldn't step foot into the Pioneer's personal property, where he and the other ones close to him lived in relatively luxury. This wasn't a big deal. The punishment was supposedly worse than death. The only reason he'd sent out police at all were to monitor for any creatures that leaked past the wall. This was uncommon, apparently. If they saw any of the regular police, would notify what was known as the command operatives to come and get rid of them, which was mainly comprised of the enhanced guards. After that, I asked about the copies. I could see him become visibly paler at the mention of them. He didn't know too much about them either. He'd never seen one. In fact, nobody around him had come to consensus on what they really were. Just don't touch them, he said. Simple as that. I asked him what would happen if you did. We have a better answer than Grillo. Well, you know how they can take your form just by looking at you, he responded. The thing is when it's just staring at you, it's merely a hollow shell of yourself. But once you made contact with it, you're essentially giving it permission to become you. And you know, two of the same person can't exist at once, so after that, you're gone. I still didn't understand what the hell that was supposed to mean. I pressed him for more answers, but he left it at that. Nobody seemed to want to talk about these things. Tree 13. The rest of the drive was uneventful, but then we reached the settlement. It's really hard to say what happened, but a massacre obviously occurred. There were abnormally large claw marks scraping into the sides of the cabins, and bodies were haphazardly scattered everywhere. I tried not to look, but there were kids. We searched the place for a while and found no survivors. Eventually, Christian went back to praying, and Lauren just started bawling. I was horrifically transfixed by the whole scene. I don't know what to think of anymore. I eventually found Travis' upper body. Safe to say the plan wasn't going to work. Kuntz cursed loudly and started pacing. I heard him mumbling, "This can't happen. I have to do this. Fuck! I can't stay here!" At that point, I echoed this sentiments pretty closely. We were We really need to get the hell off this island, but I never found any trace of Rust. His body wasn't among the dead. I did find his journal, or what was left of it. Anyways, most of the pages were torn apart, and the rest simply indecipherable. I tried analyzing it, but it just read like ramblings from a madman. However, I did find something interesting during the last few entries. He'd scribbled, "This is terrifying discovery. Before the page was ripped off. Shit. Wonder what the hell that's about. Let's go. Kuhn's voice echoed across destroyed civilization. I asked him what the plan was. I'll pilot it myself. I have to. I don't give a fuck. We're getting out of here. Entry 14. We're driving back to Paradise X now. Christian and Lauren just look disaffected now. Empty. Kuhn said that the plan was still on. It can't be that hard, right? He said, in regarding the flying. Yeah, probably not. I responded. He was obviously delusional at this point, but he seemed unstable. And I didn't want to piss off some more. I really don't know where this is going. Entry 15. It's happening. Kuntz has gone out and notified everybody who he wants. The number has actually increased to 22 now, including some civilians. I asked how the hell we were supposed to fit. We won't, is what he responded. Not all of us are going to make it. They're all aware of that. Well, that's nice to think about, I asked him and what he told them about not having a pilot. He said that they didn't say anything. They probably wouldn't have to wanted to help if they knew this. Just say you're the pilot, he told me. Don't worry, you don't have to actually do it yourself. If you don't want to, I'll figure it out. He said this with such unwavering confidence. It was definitely just a facade. I could tell that he had no hope he was going to actually work, but fuck it. There's always a chance. Besides, Dusk Blue really isn't worth staying on. Make sure you use those bullets well, he said. Every shot needs to count now. Entry 16. Fuck me. So, this is what happened. With the other 22 in some shitty warehouse, Kuntz introduced me as the pilot, or the savior, as he put it. It was really weird, honestly. They all cheered as Kuntz gave a mini motivational speech about leaving this place and finding a home worth living. This got them all riled up. However, things were looking bleak from the get-go. Amongst us, we had about 7 total bullets. Apparently some cops like to smuggle weapons, but not many. We started marching through the streets towards the hangar. A bunch of civilians and other cops stared at us melancholic curiosity as we did so. The hangar soon appeared in front of us. The problem was, there was a lot more guards than we expected. So everybody's collective faces dropped. Afterwards, we learned that somebody had sold us out in exchange for a week's supply of meat. Yes, some fucking meat. But Kuntz never told us what that hangar was directly on the Pioneer's property. The next moments were a relative blur. The renegade cops charged the hangar with blatant disregard for their own lives. My vision was obstructed by red mist and bodies as I stumbled around. There was no way in hell I was running into the sea of bullets, so I started scrambling out of there. At some point during the madness, I was clotheslined by some behemoths of a man. I blacked out soon after. I woke up after God knows how much time. I could feel turbulence. I guess we're on a plane. My chest hurts like a fucking. My legs are shackled to the wall. My weapon is gone, but the journal's still here. Great. I looked around the small space to find about 6 other cops/civilians who were there with us. Among them were Kuntz and Lauren. I guess Christian didn't make it. I called over Kuntz and asked him where the hell we were going. As I turned out, we were headed to some kind of prison located on an island called Ghost Hazard. He said it so solemnly. Everybody around here looks so defeated and tired. 17. I don't know what the hell Kuntz is trying to do right now. He seems to be trying to unshackle himself. I asked him what his plan was supposed to be, given the fact that we were probably over the ocean right now. He just stared at me with a demented look in his eye. Fuck if I know. Can't get locked up there, though. He sputtered, I've heard the stories. Makes Paradise X look like an actual paradise. Admittedly, those words disturbed me. I hadn't really thought about where we were going. If civilization was so bad here, I can't fathom what the prisons were like. Entry 18. Fuck me. Somebody just came in, he tossed everybody's parachutes. What the hell's happening? Entry 19. This shit, it just just keeps escalating. After the guards tossed us the parachutes, he opened the plane doors. A gust of wind hit me in the face as I stared out into the black sky. Kuntz asked him what the hell he was going on. Low on fuel, the guard gave him a twisted smirk. Can't drop you off, you'll have to make your own way there. As he started unshackling everybody, two of the guards soon materialized, rifles trained on us. One of the prisoners tried attacking the guard upon being freed, but was shot quickly. He was barely acknowledged. Beyond that, if you jump out of here the next 30 seconds, you should hit the land, the guard said. And I know what you're thinking. You could escape, huh? Well, there's nobody stopping you, but it's a small island, and you don't want to find out what's on it. You got a better shot of survival in the rift. Slightly, though. I later learned that the rift was the official name of the prison. The guard shot me one last smug grin before walking up and unceremoniously pushing me out. Got my parachute on just in time. He didn't give me much warning. As I look up, I saw the other prisoners coming down one by one. As we descended, I tried to scope out the island, trying to form some expectations. He didn't lie, it was small, but the size of a large shopping mall. There's only one compact concrete structure on the entire land mass. It's gonna be the prison, right? I thought to myself, but there wasn't much time for that. I was coming down fast. I made judgment and opened the parachute. I eventually landed in the shallow water near the shore. I tried taking a second to compose myself, but that's when I heard splashing behind me. I turned around expecting another prisoner. Nope. Instead, it was met with a mass of a large, dark tentacle that pierced the water's surface, clambering towards me. As I scrambled onto the shore, one of the appendages slammed down just a few inches from me, cracking the land. I made a beeline for the brooding forest in front of me. I didn't miss that was about a 10-minute walk from the prison. I seriously considered just not going, but I really thought about it. There was nowhere to fucking go. I jumped at every little sound as I made my way around the dense black woods. At one point I thought I could hear a baby crying. As I kept listening, the louder it got, the more guttural and demonic it got. I got the hell away from there. Later, I put my hand on a tree while trying to catch my breath. That's when I felt it move. I pulled away just in time to see what I thought was just a hole materializing sharp, jagged teeth. But a second later, I looked behind me to see an abnormally large humanoid thing crawling towards me. Its three heads moved in disturbingly erratic manner. Again, I bolted the fuck out of there. But a minute later, I crashed into somebody. I freaked out at first, because who knew what the fuck it was? But I heard Lauren's voice. She was hysteric. What the fuck is this place? She spoke softly, but frantically. Unfortunately, there was no time to talk. I could still hear that thing crawling towards us. I just pulled her up and told her to run. A while later, we stumbled into the clearing, where we started getting shot at. Stop! A booming voice echoed. I looked up and see people wearing some kind of a uniform staring at us in front of a building. This was it. A tall, threatening-looking man wearing what looked like a suit of armor started thundering towards us. I braced myself for the worst, but he just moved past. I looked back to see him sprint up to the creature and start strangling it. A fucking horrific sight it was. During the struggle, he called out to the guards, "Prisoners, take him in! You saw the plane, lazy bastards!" We were soon ushered into the dull structure. It looked like a shitty reception lobby. There were a few chairs and tables set up under the flickering bulbs. More guards lined the perimeter of the place, with about 1-5 being in armor, and at the front there was a small desk manned by some dude with one eye and no eye patch. He sighed and started typing. It was surprised me by how advanced the monitor looked. Given everything that's happened thus far, I was expecting that while he did this, the guards searched for us for weapons. One of them inspected my journal for a bit and eventually gave it back to me. They didn't even give us uniforms or anything. After a while, the man behind the desk grunted and signaled towards the elevator to the side. There were about 4 in total. The guards pushed us in. There were too many buttons to count. Just pressed one near the top, the doors cracked shut and began our descent. After that felt like 10 minutes, the doors opened back up and we were blasted by a cacophony of harsh sounds. Before this, I'd never really thought about what the hell it would be like. This prison was probably a good enough representation. Architecture was pretty similar to that of Alcatraz. Had you ever seen the interior? There were numerous rows of cells stretching upwards. Then I looked down at what appeared to be a black, endless fissure. It seemed like it was deeper it got. The less light were present. The most horrific screams came from the cells way below us that were nearly submerged into the darkness. The guards led us down the recluse corridor I could see how scared Lauren was, but there really wasn't anything I could do to comfort her. I took a look into the cells that I had passed by. Most of the prisoners looked human. Some I couldn't really tell. At one point, I saw Kuntz being escorted from the opposite corridor. We made eye contact for a second. His demeanor was a mixture of pissed off and terrified. The guards eventually pushed us into a small room and closed the bars behind us. That's when I took a look around. There were 2 bunk beds. The sheets looked dirty as hell and stained with crimson. So were the concrete floors. To be honest, I didn't expect much. I have to say I did breathe a sigh of relief when I saw a toilet and a small sink. There were 2 other people in the room. Both men. I guess gender separation wasn't really a thing here. But to be fair, I didn't really see how they could accomplish that in a place like this. One of the guys suddenly sat up in the bed. I didn't know what to expect from them. So I was ready to take action if he tried to touch Lauren, but he smiled at us with a big toothy yellow grin. "Hey there, name's Buck Lane." A comically stereotypical Australian accent, but he did sound friendly. He walked towards us, an arm outstretched. We both shook his hand somewhat hesitantly. I questioned how somebody could be in a place like this and still have any semblance of cheerfulness, and I asked him that. He gave us a dry chuckle. "Well, it's better not to think about it. Yeah? Won't do any good. That's how people go crazy. They think about things too much. I mean, really, consciousness even." He laughed again. Then his expression went a bit more serious. "But maybe I'm already there." I didn't really know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. I noticed that the other guy hadn't even acknowledged us. I guess Buck noticed me staring because he chimed in. "Oh, don't worry about him. He's harmless. Gone far off the deep end, though. Look at the shit he writes on the walls." I brought my gaze over the wall near his bed. Sure enough, it was covered in writing. I saw a few lines like, "Corruption engaged. There is no future," before looking away. He did have a mound of pencils lying near his bed, though. Mine was taken away earlier. I asked him if I could have one, but was met with no response. I took it as a yes. We walked back to Buck some more. As it turns out, he was also from Earth's, but he didn't seem surprised when he told him that we were as well. "It's more common here than you think," he stated. "People go missing in planes all the time. When you think about it, where they end up? Here. Whatever this place is." Hearing that gave me chills. Some regular commercial airline passengers going on vacation only end up here. That must be terrifying. Apparently, Buck was the sole survivor of a crashed plane headed to Amsterdam. "We didn't hook us, mate. That's where I thought I was heading." The plane had crashed, landed on what seemed to be a stone desert. He walked for days eating peanuts before he finally stumbled upon his civilization. "There were some strange fuckers," he went on. "Looked like they were weird rock people. I couldn't even describe it." He ended up flipping shit at the sight of them and ran away. Apparently they took this as a threat for some reason, captured him and put him in a small cage. He stayed there for days, eating strange bugs they served him, before being loaded onto a plane and being transported here. "If I went to jail on Earth, there'll usually be a reason. Not here, mate." After that, he told us about the prison. From what he had gathered, it was pretty much a global clusterfuck of an institution. Individuals were brought here from everywhere. This place was absolutely massive. Ghost Hazard wasn't the only entrance. There were others as well. Also, the more dangerous a prisoner is considered, the closer their cell was to the bottom. This is fucking insane. For food, twice a day guards would bring around what Buck referred to as nutrition blocks. Staring at one right now, it looks terribly similar to the energy bars Kuntz was eating in Paradise X. Safe to say, I have no appetite. Another similarity to Paradise X stems from the fact that this place is also essentially lawless. As long as you didn't attack the guards, steal food or resources, try to escape or cause a large-scale uprising, you had free reign. Nobody had any obligation to step into conflict that didn't directly affect them. However, this is the part that really fucking sucks. A good portion of the day has to be spent on manual labor. It was a lot of general maintenance work, but most of it's supposed to be spent down in the hole. A large cave system that had been dug through and excavated by prisoners for years. Nobody really knew what the point of it was, although the people just assumed that it was a discipline, but there were other theories. They were digging for something, no doubt about it, Buck exclaimed. One theory was that the warden, the individual who ran this place, was obsessed finding something called the Neo Grail. Supposedly, sometime during this time of history, the original Holy Grail was corrupted by a powerful demonic entity during some kind of Armageddon. That was the reason why this world went to shit. However, the warden believed that this wasn't the end of it. He studied the various ancient books and scriptures, and had come to the conclusion that there was another grail hidden somewhere in the vicinity of the prison. That's why he went about building this place. When the Neo Grail was finally uncovered by a holy man like himself, the world would revert back to peace, but this was the only one theory. Some think that the warden has much more sinister aspirations, that he's actually trying to start Armageddon himself. Speaking of the warden, his history is shrouded in enigma. Nobody really knows where the hell he came from. He has a large office in the surface of one of the island entrances, but rarely comes down to the actual prison. A few alleged description of his appearance, however. Not so long ago, there was a large insurgency around the lower levels. People were going insane down there. Eventually, a large enough group was formed to the extent where they decided that they were tangibly enough to threaten the guards. They started rioting, working up the levels, trying to get their service. Eventually, it was deemed enough of an emergency that the warden needed to be called. This was a big deal. As the story goes, he came down to the lower floors himself, completely unarmed, and took out the insurgency single-handedly. According to the people that saw him, he was extremely tall, maybe around 8'5". He wore a large trench coat with a religious symbol stitched all over it. Then there was his eyes. This wasn't contested, but they were allegedly pitch black, lifeless. Along with that, he looked young in appearance, despite the fact that he'd been around for a long fucking time. Also, nobody knew where the source of his strength came from. He could pick up a 200 lb's man with one arm and throw him aside with ease. Upon being stabbed, the metal of the blade would just break off of his skin. So people thought he was the devil incarnate. After that, theory about him being somebody trying to return peace to the world became a lot less popular, especially after what happened next. What worked at the absolute bottom of the prison was a mystery, with there being no lights down there at all. However, the survivors of the uprising were given a chance to know. Instead of them all being executed, they were given a different punishment. They were lowered by rope into the dark crevice. They seemed like hell, and most of them tried to commit suicide. They stayed down there for about a minute before being brought back up. Buck witnessed this firsthand. He said that they could hear the indescribable animalistic sounds emanating from below. It was a horrific sight when they were brought back up. They were deformed, but not in the traditional sense. Some of them had strange-looking limbs growing out of their legs. Some had sprouted eyes on their arms, and some of them had no resemblance of human features at all. I would try to escape, Buck told us, but I can't probably see why that's not happening. The first time, his cheery expression dropped. It's as if he just reminded himself of how bad the situation really was. But, and no, one more thing. How long are we here for? I asked him. I was scared as hell for the response. None of the guards had even said a word to us about this, but he just sighed. I've never seen anybody leave. I couldn't tell you, but don't worry about it. Should be right. There was no confidence in his voice. I know he doesn't believe that. I can hear the guards opening the door next to us. Buck said that it's time to go into the hole. The workday was starting, but here's the thing. There's no way in hell that I'm staying in this place. I'll find a fucking way to leave if it kills me.